Hi everyone, I'm Adriana Perez, the director of the MC to UCLA program, and today I'm going to share some tips on how to approach your PIQ section of the UC application. And so now to begin with some PIQ basics. There's one required question, and then you'll be given 7 questions, and you'll choose 3 of your choice to answer. And here's a quote from the UC admissions website, and they state, "All questions are given equal consideration in the application review process," which means there is no advantage or disadvantage to choosing certain questions over others. And so this really encourages you to choose the question that's most relevant to your life experience and the one that you think you can answer the best. And also a reminder, there is a 350 word limit, so you want to make sure you're staying within those restrictions. Now I'd like to share some PIQ tips. So I recommend that you always read and highlight keywords in the question. And beneath each question there will be a things to consider in italics. I also highly recommend you look at those notes and try to answer those questions. I also recommend that you craft a story and try to be creative. Remember, they're reading a lot of essays, so sometimes you want to write something that will make you stand out a little. And really importantly, try not to repeat yourself. If you've already written about an accomplishment in another part of the application, you don't need to talk about it again, and try to highlight some other accomplishments that you've done. And so now let's take a look at a sample PIQ from one of our mentees last year who was accepted to UCLA. And so they decided to answer question 4, which reads, "Describe how you have taken advantage of a significant educational opportunity or worked to overcome an educational barrier you have faced." And so if you look below the question, you can see in italics things to consider, where the UC lists some examples of what they might want you to answer or some examples of what you can write about. I highly recommend you look at these examples and suggestions and really take them into consideration. And so you can see here that we've highlighted some important key terms that the student then uses in their own response to this PIQ. We highlighted taken advantage, overcome. We definitely want to talk about how they have taken advantage of an educational opportunity and have overcome the barrier. We also want to talk about an experience that better prepared them for college. And we want to highlight how they overcame their barrier and some personal characteristics and skills that they used to overcome their challenge. And we always want to talk about how this experience is relevant today. Now here are some questions to ask yourself that can help you address this PIQ question. So you should try to answer, what was the challenge? How did it affect you? How did you solve it? And how do you apply what you learned to the present? And you'll see that this student answered these questions in the next slide. So now let's take a look at the sample PIQ this student provided. It has been slightly edited to respect their privacy, but this is essentially what they submitted in their UC application. And so I'll go ahead and read it. "I attended a small private religious school from kindergarten to 8th grade in which grade levels were combined to compensate for the lack of teachers and classrooms, and religious values were strictly enforced. The lack of extracurriculars and tiny class sizes created a significant educational barrier that would later affect my transition into high school. The culture shock I experienced when I transitioned to public high school was unfathomable, as I realized how shy and inexperienced I was in the real world." And so just to pause, you can see that I've highlighted in orange that the student immediately identified what the challenge is. So now moving on, the student says, "In my first years of high school, I kept to myself and would focus on my academics, not participating in the social aspects of extracurriculars because I was not exposed to that for 11 years at my private school. I was socially withdrawn and hesitant to participate in other social opportunities." And so here we've highlighted in yellow some personal experiences they had with the barrier and talking about how it affected them. And now continuing, "I was hesitant to participate in other social opportunities until I was introduced to Future Business Leaders of America, FBLA." And you see here they identify what helped them overcome their barrier. And also as a side note, it's always important that you first write out an acronym before you start using the acronym in your essay. So continuing, "Despite the fact that this club was not fully established and was outside of my comfort zone, I gave it a try. Through my participation in this club, I learned that my greatest skill is getting out of my comfort zone to overcome challenges. I attended a conference with workshops and networking events where I interacted with students from different schools, exposing myself to people with similar interests and utilizing my communication and social skills. So you see here in green, the student is going into detail about how they overcame their barrier and the skills that they learned. I was amazed with my involvement in FBLA as I was participating in leadership development workshops, something I previously doubted. I eventually went to a FBLA competition and won second place. When I received my plaque, I realized my potential and capability. It was confirmed my skills to pursue a career in healthcare. I no longer felt withdrawn and doubtful about my skills and knew I could pursue more challenges in the future. In college, I started my own FBLA club to help others flourish the way I did. I look forward to future leadership opportunities when I transfer as I overcome more challenges and broaden my horizons. So you see in blue that this student talked about what they did with what they learned and what they plan to do in the future, which is really important, and I highly recommend you do this for every single one of your essays. I hope these tips were helpful, but if you'd like more help on your PIQs and you'd like an actual UCLA student to revise them with you, you should definitely consider joining MC2UCLA. If you'd like to apply, please email mc2ucla@gmail.com. Thank you so much for listening.